How's this? This tripod that I'm using is pretty handy. It's like one of those octopus tripods. So it's just wrapped around my lamp. Well, not my lamp. My desk lamp. What do I want to start off with? I guess I'll start off with this. I just bought so many books and I'm excited about them. Oh. This is totally unplanned, but these are all the books that I just bought, minus Awaken the Giant and Tools of Titan. I bought all those and I'm gonna be planning to read it, so that's exciting. And I was just reading this, finished part 1 actually, and I know it's been like a week or so, so eventually I'll be fast enough. But I wanted to read out some of my notes to refresh my memory and to also improve my public speaking abilities. So, the whole point of this book actually, let's see. The whole point of this book is summarized in the highly improbable consequential event. And these events are so improbable. I'm going to just speak free-flowing and then probably take a look at my notes later. Because I was just reading and I just finished reading and there's some pretty cool points. Like it talks about how the casinos, one of the casinos are having basically a huge event. And in this event, they probably spent about $100 million in the risk department, so risk analysis and risk prevention and everything like that to prevent really lucky people from, say, winning $300 million in sequential events, or to prevent cheaters who would game the system or count the cards and all that. So what they wanted to do was they wanted to reduce the risk. And they spent over $100 million. Now, the real risk wasn't in those areas. The risks, the places that they lost the most money were things they had no idea about. For example, one of the cases was an entertainer got mauled by his own tiger. So in just that event, they lost millions of dollars through that. Another event is highly improbable events, like one of their employees, for whatever reason, no one knows to this day why it happened, but one of the reasons why, or one of the things that happened was that one of the employees hid the tax papers, so underneath some random filing cabinets, so no one could find them. And what happened is that they weren't able to do their taxes properly. So then the government came after them and they had to pay their way out. Basically owed a lot of fines because they didn't get to they didn't pay their taxes correctly or on time. And there's a couple other things, but mainly the thing that they were trying to prevent, their whole goal was trying to reduce the events or the risks that would take money from them, and they were looking in the wrong places. They were thinking inside the box when the things that really took money from them were outside the box. So when you're analyzing risks, the more unfocused you are at trying to find risks, the better you'll do at risk I guess it's called analyzing risks, because a lot of the major things that happen that have the most impact are almost unpredictable if you look inside the box. Now, humans, and we all have the same basic biases. Charlie Munger's coined the term the 25 cognitive bias, and it talks about some of them in this book. There is the confirmation bias, the hindsight bias, And there's a couple of other fallacies that the book talks about. But the confirmation bias is basically making a guess, or believing something is true and then doing everything that you can, doing everything possible to confirm that truth. So for example, conspiracy theories fall prey to this confirmation very easily, because they come up with this whole theory and then everything they do after that is to confirm what they predicted or what they believe is true. And they don't look for any disconfirming evidence. So the most powerful thing you can do is look for disconfirming evidence, just like Darwin. Actually, Darwin is a really good example, because if you look at him, and this is not me saying it, obviously I'm not trying to degrade or make Darwin less of what he accomplished. But what he did was he looked for evidence against his claims. So people who really studied Darwin know that he wasn't really the brightest man. He was kind of just the average guy. But what he did was he looked for disconfirming evidence, and over time he removed all the errors instead of looking for confirmation bias, which is what a lot of people do. And it's something you really want to look out for. Hindsight bias is thinking that you looking into the past to really figure out. I'm going to change the lighting here. It's kind of hurting my eyes. Is looking into the past when an event has already happened, and being able to seemingly analyze and know everything there is to do with that. So for example, 9/11, a lot of people had the hindsight bias of, oh, of course the cockpit pilot doors should have been locked and bulletproof. And if they had done that, then this would never have happened. So I'm going to talk about a few points in the back that I made while reading. I like to write into the book. It helps me remember, and I already know that my memory is pretty bad. So that's actually why I'm doing some of these videos, is to help me extract the information that I'm reading. They say a mind or a brain is like an attic, and there's like a tiny clerk that is your conscious mind that occupies a little part of the attic, and if you want to retrieve that clerk goes and looks for it in this huge attic. So if you don't practice retrieving information from the attic, basically like you never stored it in the first place. Oh, one of the things that kind of blinds us in history, he calls it the triplet of opacity. So the illusion of knowledge prevents us from learning and growing more. Retrospective distortion, which means when you look back on it, you distort the actual facts to fit whatever story that's going on in your mind. And the overvaluation of factual information. And that basically means that you put too much weight in the known, when what you should be scared of is the unknown. It's things that you don't even know, and things that are outside the box that have a huge impact on your business or on you as a person. So, and it's funny because a lot of times when you see people doing something wrong, you're really good at picking out what they do, but at the same time, it's really hard for you to see it in yourself too. So we all have this kind of bias, and I need to really look after that. Now the points in the back of my book. I might read it out and then extrapolate a little bit on it. So, what you don't know is more relevant than what you do know. So what that means, and it's pretty self-explanatory, what you don't know can and possibly will hurt you. It's called the unknown unknowns, as opposed to the known knowns. There's 4 levels of basically knowing something. There's the known knowns, the unknown knowns, the known unknowns, and the known unknowns. Yeah?
Dinner's ready.
Okay. I'll be down in a bit. Talk about black swans. Highly improbable. Well, that wasn't too bad because disrupted my flow a bit, but I got a little list that I'm gonna move down, so it wasn't during my monologue. Anyways, black swans are unpredictable, so we should adjust to their existence. Meaning that these things actually do happen quite often, and the strategy that we have right now should incorporate or be flexible enough so that if something happens, we're not stranded there. We basically make backup on backups. So if something happens, we have something to fall back on. Or if something happens that is an opportunity, we're not so rigid in our structure that we can't go after that, because that opportunity can help us a lot. So, and there's the fact that we are rewarded unfairly. So for those that fix things and have physical proof of what they did, it's so prevalent even in stocks that the people that are showing gains, short-term gains, and incentivized to do short-term gains are a lot well known than the people that are trying to shoot for the long term. That's where we get a lot of the problems that we've had financially. And it's dangerous because short term doesn't necessarily mean the long term of the company or whatever you're going in. And it's not rewarded fairly. The person, he gave a good example, a cool example of the legislator. He's kind of, he has a funny sense of humor, because what he said was, he put in quotations, a very smart legislator, inferring or referring that not all legislators are smart, or most legislators are pretty dumb. I guess that's what he's saying. And how if one of those people foresaw a possibility of a plane being hijacked, then they would have gone through all that rigorous, hard paperwork to pass a law that pilot or cockpits, the doors to the cockpit were bulletproof and locked so that no one can hijack a plane. If that happened, 9/11 would have never happened, the towers would have never collapsed, and that person, the legislator that passed those bills, would have never been hailed as a hero. And it's so common. He also talks about evidence that we don't see. So one that's sticking out to me, and I'm not religious and I have nothing against any other religion, but one of the facts, there's these philosophers talking, or a philosopher and some citizen that has brought up, hey, look at this, all these people that prayed survived this accident. And what the philosopher said was, how about all those people that prayed and didn't survive the accident? Because the people who prayed and didn't survive had no voice, like they were not known. So what he was saying was, the facts about life that we know right now, we know because the people who are saying it are more vocal than the people who are saying nothing. And I'm running out of memory room in this, so I'm just going to talk with the camera. I'm going to let this keep running, and it's probably going to cut off, so don't be surprised. Also, I don't think anyone's watching, so it doesn't matter. Black swans are a sucker's problem, which basically means you're a sucker because you weren't aware of it. You were thinking too in the box. You should think outside the box and incorporate those black swans into your planning. This is relative to knowledge, and you can accidentally create black swans. So, also, be careful of categorizing or summarizing or putting analogies to, I know I use some analogies, but those analogies are good for getting a broad sense of things. But usually in an analogy, you get, the details are lost. So be careful when you categorize, because it really reduces the complexity of the thing you're trying to explain, and that can cause serious problems, because simplicity, or they say devil's in the details, but they also say heaven is in the details. So, and induction is a problem as well. I remember this in alchemy. David Mills was talking a lot about this. And induction is a problem because basically we support what we believe based on things that happen, based on proof, but that's not good enough sometimes. For example, he used the analogy of a turkey, using proof that the farmer fed him every single day, that the farmer was friendly and had no ill intent towards him. But obviously on Thanksgiving, on the 1001 day, the farmer